I do want to begin by congratulating President Widodo on hosting a very successful G20 meeting. Countries, the 20 largest economies in the world, have come together at a difficult time to issue a declaration moving forward to meet the challenges which are before us. This G20 took place post-COVID, and with the COVID recovery being a real focus, with the themes of recovering stronger. It also took place with inflationary pressure being global, energy security issues, and also food security. And countries came together to declare that we needed to cooperate and use all of the tools available to deal with these challenges. And I'm proud that Australia has played a constructive role at the G20 meeting, both in the summit itself, but also in the bilateral meetings, in the meetings leading up to the summit taking place. We indicated our view, which was reflected in the communique, that we need to transform our economies to deal with the challenge of climate change. We need to move to a carbon-constrained future. In the communique, it also indicated support for the Paris Agreement was confirmed, as well as calling upon countries to increase their nationally determined contributions, something that Australia has already done. I also spoke today in the forum about digitalisation and the important role that it will play in economic growth, but also that process of digitalisation had important equity components as well. We need to make sure that people get access to that new technology, and we also need to be conscious, as we are in Australia in recent times, that cybersecurity remains an issue that needs to be dealt with by countries, but also by individual companies as well. The statement also refers to tax havens and the need to take action as part of ensuring that governments can move forward with a fiscally sound position, including preparing for potential future shocks. On Ukraine, the statement recalls the UN vote. It calls out, of course, those UN votes called out Russian aggression and demanded Russia's complete and unconditional withdrawal from Ukraine, and I believe that was a very positive statement. In addition to that, I held a range of bilaterals today with the European Union about our free trade agreement, which we're hoping to progress in the coming year. With Italy and its new Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, I was able to congratulate her on her election, and we spoke about trade, but also we spoke about the people-to-people relations that are so important between Australia and Italy. With France, we spoke about the roadmap that has arisen from the previous discussions I've had with President Macron. It has three elements to it. One element of cooperation on defence and security. Secondly, on climate change and energy. And thirdly, on culture moving forward as well. And I am hopeful that President Macron will visit Australia next year, and we discussed the potential of that as well. I also met with Prime Minister Modi of India, where we discussed the finalisation of the closer economic cooperation agreement between Australia and India, which we regard as being very important for expanding the economic relationship between Australia and India. I will visit India in March. We'll take a business delegation to India, and that will be an important visit and an upgrade in the relationship that we have between our two nations. And of course, Prime Minister Modi will visit Australia next year for the Quad Leaders meeting, and then I will return to India later in the year for the G20 summit. We also spoke about the details of the Quad leaders meeting that will take place next year. With Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, we spent a lot of time together over the last few days because we sat next to each other in the summit, but we had a formal bilateral as well where we discussed AUKUS and the timetable there, which we're looking towards March of next year. We spoke about the free trade agreement, which has been ticked off by the Parliamentary Committee today, and that we're hoping to come into force in the first quarter of next year. We also spoke about AUKUS and the importance of those arrangements as well, and it was a very constructive meeting. All in all, I think the last couple of days has been extremely successful for Australia, being able to put forward our position on the challenges which the global economy faces, on the need to deal with climate change, on the need to have inclusive economies going forward as well. It has cemented personal relationships that I've been able to develop in the under 6 months that I've been Prime Minister with our important allies, as well as, of course, yesterday we had a constructive dialogue with President Xi. Happy to take questions.
Prime Minister, is there anything that out of this G20...
Well, Catherine.
Prime Minister, you mentioned AUKUS in your remarks, and obviously you've met President Biden, you've met Prime Minister Sunak, you've met Emmanuel Macron. Did any of the conversations that you've had between Cambodia and now canvass options for what the government will do in the interim before these submarines are due to be delivered, given that they've got such a long run delivery time? What can Australians expect government to do in the interim?
Well, yes, what we'll be doing is producing, of course, our defence strategy document that's being developed by Angus Houston and Stephen Smith. That was upgraded from being a Defence Force Posture Review into a Defence Strategic Review, because we want to talk about not just where we place our defence assets, but what those appropriate assets are. So we did have some discussions about that. Obviously, some of those matters are things that I won't go into publicly, but they'll be the subject of the Defence Strategic Review that you will see before March of next year.
Prime Minister, is there anything that came out of this G20 summit that made you think Vladimir Putin can and will be stopped when it comes to Ukraine?
What I saw come out of it was the declaration today. That was quite extraordinary that President Widodo noted in his closing remarks that that's the first time you've had a statement like that come out of a body like the G20, which of course Russia is a member of. I think it was a very clear statement in those circumstances, and in that context, Russia is increasingly isolated. That is what the G20 showed. And Australia, I said earlier today, but I'll say it again, Australia stands with Ukraine and its people. We saw overnight 80 missiles fired into Ukraine. We've seen a reckless use of force that has consequences for the region. Our condolences go to Poland with the loss of life that has occurred there. There'll be an investigation, of course, into those details, and then a further response, an appropriate response, once those investigations are determined.